Hello, welcome to Wavemaker live from our living rooms. I'm Whitney Fishman Zember. I run innovation and consumer technology for Wavemaker. My assistant for the week is joining us today. This is Bamba, the adopted dog. We are very lucky that we have Krystal with us today, who runs innovation for GroupM and is our professional in-house for all things Metaverse. I'm very bummed to not be spending physical CES with Krystal running on the show floors, but fortunately, we get to do this together virtually this year. So she's been kind enough to give us some of her time to talk all things Metaverse, what we're seeing on the show floors, what she thinks marketers care about. And just thanks for being here, Krystal, from your living room.
Thanks for having me, Whitney. I feel like it's almost appropriate that CES is virtual this year. And had they only invested in building out a metaverse of the floor tours, maybe we'd all be experiencing it that way.
The only thing that
unfortunately or fortunately,
I think it's a bit of both, right? But I do think, and we've been speaking about this all week, CES tends to have a lot of buzzwords and fluff. And the one great thing about Metaverse specifically, because it's such a buzzword, is it's given a few companies a chance to put their money where their mouth is in terms of showing that they can actually execute on it, right?
Yeah.
So let's take a step back. There's so many definitions, and it's just one of these broad, all-encompassing terms. How do you define Metaverse?
Yeah, I think the definition of the metaverse might be one of the hardest parts about wrapping your head around the metaverse. So for myself and for GroupM, we really define it as a virtual environment that's broad, but also can be focused in a specific community. And it's supposed to support real-time interactions comparable to the real world. It can replicate a workplace, it can replicate gaming, education, all through integration of various technologies. We've heard about things like virtual reality, 5G, cryptocurrencies. All of these components can come together to really create this immersive environment. And I think for us, that's really the kind of definition we're wrapping around. So it's less about any one individual technology and more about the advancement of an experience digitally to really be immersive.
And I love how you're defining it, because I think people seem to look at technologies in vacuums and lanes, right? So there's AR, there's VR, there's crypto. But the reality is, for these things to actually succeed, they all need to come together, because when a consumer goes through their lives, and they wake up, check their phone, brush their teeth, go about their day, they're not saying, okay, time for an AR experience. Okay, time for a streaming experience. They just go through their day. So for these things to work, everything needs to really be able to come together as one.
It's so important, the ubiquity of these concepts, because I think a lot of people still think about the metaverse as just Oculus. Like there's one version of the metaverse and it's just powered through Oculus. And that's so far from sort of the reality of what metaverse opportunities are today. And there's a whole debate over if we'll even need that hardware long-term, or if sort of these things or metaverses will become synonymous with the different devices that we have, which I think is more of the future. I do think that there will be some hardware components in there for a more immersive experience, but we're seeing it through things like Roblox today. The metaverse can just be as simple as how you engage differently within video games on your standard computer today or phone.
And I think people, to your point, I think there's this misconception, right? Because Facebook came in hot trying to own the term meta. I think the press, for the most part, likes to have pithy buzzwords, right? And pithy sentences. So people even saying the term the metaverse, there isn't just one metaverse. There's never going to be just one metaverse. This isn't the Matrix. This isn't a movie where we all plug in. It's not Ready Player One. There's going to be different things for different use cases, whether it's working or playing. And frankly, anyone who's played Roblox or Second Life years ago, I don't know if you remember when there's all that press about people getting married in Second Life and what does it mean for their real world marriages? Is it cheating on your spouse, right? All of that. That was an iteration of what a metaverse can be. It's living a life online and engaging activities online.
Yeah, it's such a good point. I'm like laughing thinking about Second Life, because it was what an interesting sort of first dive into what a metaverse could be, and hopefully some learnings for brands too, and like the need for things like some brand safety and things like that within that ecosystem. But you're right, it is bigger than just any one company. It is not going to be one individual thing. It's probably I hate bringing another term of like the multiverse of metaverses into this, but there will likely be a lot of different environments that consumers can go to based on what they're trying to accomplish.
Yes. So for CES specifically, I know we've seen a few brands tapping into the metaverse and kind of showing off their wares. What have you seen that's been interesting to you?
I think one of the interesting things to me has been actually the automotive space and Hyundai just releasing sort of the ability to test drive a car in the metaverse. Like that's a version of an activation and a new aged activation. But I think there are some learnings in there about how you can start to sort of take these physical products and capabilities and bring them into the virtual space and kind of merge those two worlds together. I'm interested in your favorite or some of the most interesting things you've seen out of CES within the space, though.
You know, I have so many. I'm working on my report, it comes out, and the last section is always just the random stuff that I love and just shock, right? But what I think is interesting about the metaverse is, again, it's like NFTs, it's like AR, it's just the AI, right? Every single partner we talk to says everything's powered by AI, but most of it actually isn't when you look under the hood. I'm actually impressed by the companies who are taking the chaos of COVID and cancellations at CES as an opportunity. So Perfect Core, for example, most people know them for their AR technology for trying on beauty products or hair color and lipstick and nail polish. So they had a whole booth and a whole situation to show their new AR, their new VR, their new NFT development technology. So they actually created their own iteration of a metaverse for meetings. So you can actually go to a specific site, you can schedule time, you can talk to somebody in real time through them within the metaverse. You can sample the products, you can do demos you would have done on a screen at their booth. But they're really showing that when they talk about leveraging AR for metaverse as try-ons and sampling and purchasing within the metaverse space and creating NFTs that can unlock metaverse-esque experiences, they're showing that they know what they're talking about and they have the technology to actually do it versus just sort of, look over here, not over here, this may happen and not.
Yeah, it's not the buzzword bingo, it's them actually understanding, which is, yeah, really impressive.
Yeah, if you can nail the baseline stuff, that's usually the coolest, right?
Yeah.
Anyone can make a concept something, but when you can actually show, you can bring it to life, that's when you start to think about what can your brand start doing now, not next year.
Yeah, such a good point.
Yeah. So for marketers, right, recognizing how many different brands we work with in industries, for someone who says, I want to get into the metaverse, obviously the first thing you have to do is teach them what the metaverse actually is, because it's not the, right, it's a. But what's your recommendations for brands who are interested, want to figure out what their space to play is, what the rules of the road are, recognizing things like regulation around crypto are going to come into play, ethics are going to come into play. What's your baseline insight and advice for people who are interested in exploring that as part of their strategy this year?
It's a great question. And it's honestly one we're still really working through as a group. And you're obviously involved in that too. I think there are a few things though. I think the first one is understanding why this is happening now and why consumers are leaning in as heavily as they are now. Some of that's driven obviously by the pandemic and what the pandemic created. Obviously, we're sitting here virtually talking about CES has created in terms of like looking for alternative lives and alternative ways to experience life. There's also this other component, which is really around the broader evolution of the internet. It's tough to say, but we have to say it. There is a subset of consumers that are frustrated with the way the internet was designed in its current iteration, which is known as like Web 2.0, which is really around platform-based ownership and ad-supported revenue. And I think what we're seeing now is this movement of the Web3 technologies, which is like block graph, NFTs, cryptocurrency, like all of those things are under this Web 3.0 movement. The Web 3.0 movement is a big picture movement. It's this world where everyone will be decentralized. Everyone will own their own data. Everyone will own everything they do online and they'll be able to make revenue from it. It's probably more of a vision state than a reality of where we'll get to, but it is fueling the technologies that are powering sort of the components that are feeding into a metaverse. And I think understanding those technologies, understanding the drivers, to your point, the considerations is really where brands need to start. They need to understand that. Then they need to understand how they want their sort of presence to be felt. Do they want their own centralized universe? Do they want to be part of or metaverse? Do they want to be part of someone else's metaverse? Do they want to be an asset that lives inside of a gaming experience? Do they want to have a pop-up? There's so many different ways that you can enter into the metaverse, but I think it really starts with understanding the capabilities and the movement that's happening in the space, understanding what you want your role to be, and understanding actually that consumer set, your consumer set, and how the two either overlap or are distinctly different, and you can use it as an extension of relationship. So that was a lot, but that's sort of, I don't have one quick one for brands. There's a lot to unpack, I think, before they dive right in. But I love your builds on that if you have any.
I mean, when it comes to any new technology or platform, my advice is always the baseline the same. You can be a lurker. You don't need to be an active citizen, but you need to sign up for Roblox. You need to sign up for Decentraland. You need to check out these things as a consumer so that you can understand. You don't have to love it, right? But what you like about it, what you don't like about it, what you're seeing other brands do, what you're seeing the opportunities and space to play is. And then you figure out, how does my brand and my story, how can it bring value and utility to these spaces? But I think if you don't look at something as a human and as a user first, going straight as a marketer, you don't understand the community facet, which to your point is driving Web3 and driving this notion of meta living online and all these opportunities for new communities. And you can't just push yourself into a community. You need to be a part of the community and build from within. So my recommendation is always just sign up, make an account. You have kids who are playing Roblox, just sit with them and watch, ask questions.
Yeah, the community aspect is such a good point, because so much of it is driven by that small group of developers and coders who want to change the world. They do have a culture. There is actually a culture and a community that's living within the early adopters in these spaces, and they may look different in each metaverse. So the Roblox culture may be different than the Decentraland culture. In fact, I'm sure it is. But understanding the cultures too is really important, because you are trying to develop a community. And if you want to dive in as a brand, you need to be respectful of that community and lean in with it, as opposed to try to disrupt it or bring your own or ignore what's happening in there and just pretend it's all the same, because it's not.
Yeah, I mean, look, whether it's word of mouth marketing, event-based marketing in Metaverse, right? It's community first, understanding you're part of the community. You can't just come in hot.
No.
Right. No one wants to be the Twitter tweet that is off brand and doesn't get what's going on in culture. Seen a lot of those this week. So for my last question, just putting it out there, if you had to make any prediction for 2022 coming out of CES and what you've seen, what you've heard, what you like, what you think is absurd, what is a prediction that when we hopefully are in Vegas together next year, I can follow up on and see if you're right?
Oh no, that was a really good question. Ooh.
I mean, it could be flying cats in space.
I mean, flying dogs in space, and I'm all in. I think that coming out of this year, obviously there is so much buzz flying around the metaverse and the NFT space. And if I just focus, I know that and I should say this, the metaverse and Web3 and the NFT space, they are distinct, but they intersect. And I think that we're going to see a lot in this year of investment around the intersection of those two things. So I think a lot more, we're going to start to see, the brands that are ready to dive in, the brands that feel confident and savvy enough to start sort of immersive experimentation within the metaverse. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I think we'll see some mistakes along the way. And some learnings. Learnings is the right way to put it. I think we'll see some learnings along the way. But I don't think that this is going to be the thing this year that every consumer is fully immersed in either. I think it's going to take us 3 to 5 years to actually see the investments that are being made today come into sort of mainstream fruition. So that's my bet, is that there's progress, there are learnings, and that this likely isn't going to be a fad. It's a direction of travel. I don't think this is going to go away in a month or 3 months or 6 months. I think we'll still be talking about this in years to come. It may change name, it may change shape, but I think this concept is real, and it's a big bet that I feel very confident to stand behind.
It's a good one.
Do you have one?
Mine's boring. It's regulation. I think people realized how late they've been to regulate things like the larger social platforms and how complicated and convoluted it gets so quickly. Looking at what people are doing with crypto and the role crypto is going to play within these spaces when it comes to payments, right? How do you buy the digital lipstick within the metaverse that you can then translate to customer loyalty in the real world to cash in? I think you're going to see a lot of at least attempts on regulation around the crypto side because that's one of the real core components of creating these universes on a global scale with mixed results, right? And we'll see how that impacts things like NFTs. I mean, my other thing is pretty obvious, right? We're in the Gartner hype cycle. So the toilet paper NFTs at some point are going to tank because there's no utility or value. And I'm very excited for when it jumps the shark because I really think the notion of digital IP and owning your digital assets, that is actually going to change the way every contract is written with content creators, with podcast studios, with every time we work with a content creator for content for our brands, our brand contracts with our clients. Owning your IP and understanding the role of digital IP is so critical. And so it is so important. But I think once we get past the hype cycle with NFTs, understanding how they can actually unlock this notion of digital ownership, it's going to be massive for things like the evolution of customer loyalty, right? You have the little plastic things on our keys, and you have the app, right? And you just scan. And I think the NFT has the opportunity to have create a digital wallet, right? Or a digital key card that can unlock value and show off assets in a specific way that can be both meta and physical.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I actually agree with both of those points. So
we will have to see how we do next year. Hopefully in Vegas, far away from all of the chaos of right now.
Yeah, I would so much rather be in Vegas. It's like 25 degrees here in New York right now.
You know, not in our offices. But thank you so much for making time. I know it's a crazy week. I really appreciate your time and look forward to seeing what comes true this year and working with you to make it happen.
Yeah, thanks, Whitney. It was great. Thank you for inviting me. And I always love when I get to speak to another female in the technology space. So
Definitely.
Look forward to doing it more soon.
All right, we will talk soon. Thanks, everyone.